Farm to Fork by Niti Bali. Forward by Joe Salatin. Most of us are familiar with the chaos theory idea that a butterfly in the Bahamas can flap its wings at just the right time and place to start a hurricane. If that is true, then imagine what can start with a great big butterfly flapping its wings. That is the hurricane known as Niti Bali. And the butterfly was her daughter, Meenakshi, finally losing her battle with cancer at the tender age of 4. What can possibly be more tragic than the loss of a child, especially a young child? And what could possibly stir a parent to militant activism than the guilt that the death was preventable, or at least that mom and dad could have offered a better response for the illness? And what could be better guilt assuagement than devoting your life to making sure that no other parent ever suffers through the same tragedy? All of us live in a shoulda, woulda, coulda voice in our heads because we've all let ourselves or others down. Sometimes those letdowns are small, like not putting effort into studying for a test we failed, or big, like trusting the mainstream orthodox oncology department with responsible decision making. Nothing is as powerful as testimony. It's still the foundation of any guilt or innocence declaration in a court of law. While by no means as tragic as Niti's story, my own unforgettable tangles with food police stir similar passions and perseverance to crusade for a different world. My first farm plan was to milk 10 cows and sell the milk to neighbors, but it was illegal according to the food regulators. I've forgiven, but not forgotten. A few years later, I'll never forget the day a food regulator knocked on my front door, flashed his big badge like an FBI agent. He worked for the Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services and the Federal Food Safety Inspection Service, and said he'd confiscated all our year's production of beef due to anonymous reports that we were selling uninspected food. Later, when yet another public servant with VDACS food enforcement told us our outdoor processed chickens were inherently unsanitary and unadulterated. The open air contaminants, don't you know? And we must cease and desist supplying chlorinated chickens to our hundreds of customers. Righteous indignation welled within me. And it still wells, propelling me to tell the story, not forget, and wake people up. While these can't compare to the horrific story Niti's family experienced at the hand of professional experts, people supposedly versed in truth, I deeply appreciate how this experience acts as a propellant. It literally creates mini hurricanes of energy in society. Some people would call me a hurricane, but they haven't met Niti. Some people will surely think Niti is too far out and would like to rein her in. Plenty of people have advised her to tone it down. Don't you know your rhetoric might alienate people? Well, well-meaning diplomats have told me that all my life. All I can say is wait until the bureaucrat shows up on your door and confiscates your farm's total annual production. I've watched heavily armed assault teams confiscate food from home freezers, disrupt clean food deliveries, and no, I will not be silent and I will not tone it down. And a few amps of tragedy and personal emotional torment, and you have, add a few amps of tragedy and personal emotional torment, and you have Niti's story. To ask her to throttle it back, to take the edge off, would be a gross injustice. In fact, I'd call it negligent to the cause. Righteous indignation is a powerful force of good. The old saying that a moving boat makes no waves applies to Niti. She offends people. She really offends people. But her force of heart, her force of sacredness shines through. Even the most defensive naysayer can't walk away from Niti's story unmoved. You either agree, at least partially, in her conclusions, or you say she's a crackpot. And if you say she's a crackpot, go back to the back third of the book and start reading the stories from witnesses. As strong as Niti's personal story of defeat and counterattack may be, these personal testimonies of food-cured ailments add credence to all her claims. Are they anecdotes? Yes. Are they subjective in as much as they are personal observations? Yes. But in her inimicil style, Niti simply says, I will not participate in a distracting contest of whose science was able to compile the most convincing evidence to change your mind. Of course, she's right. Every argument can find a scientist somewhere to support it. I challenge you all to do your own experiment instead. What if you and your family decide to spend an entire growing season only eating from the farms? From profound challenging sentence to profound challenging sentence, Niti doesn't let up on the gas pedal. She presses and presses. There is no 80-20 rule for poison. You do not take time to enjoy homemade meals with the highest quality ingredients, which means you do not believe your family and your children are worth very much. You matter and you are important. So find a local grass farmer and support them and bring all your neighbors. You do not want to wait until you receive a diagnosis before you make regenerative lifestyle changes. If cavemen didn't eat it, we won't eat it. When every cell begins to matter, your thinking changes. This book is like food yoga. It's part browbeating, self-flagellation, and part sacred affirming empowerment. Niti is a food farm ninja, perhaps a food swami on steroids. But when 27,000 children in the U.S. each year receive a critical illness diagnosis, it's time for militancy. Some of my favorite portions of the book are when she defends her credentials. When people take offense at her indictment of the professional oncologist and challenge her with, who do you think you are? You have no credentials. You're not a scientist, etc. Niti dares to respond with a crescendo of mother's love to protect her children and a wife's adoration to be security for her husband. She does not apologize for just being someone who cares. Who do I think I am? Is probably answered better in this book than any layperson's apologetic I've ever read. When she's done, you want to stand up and cheer, "Go, Niti." Finally, I deeply appreciate Niti's confession that her change of mindset from food and wellness passivity to aggressive proactivity was when she realized it was all about personal responsibility. That freed her from being enslaved to the experts. It freed her from being enslaved to taunts from family and friends. It freed her from the bondage of wanting to be included and not thought a weirdo. That is a powerful message in a day when excuses and victimhood are the style du jour. Ultimately, responsibility produces liberty, not the other way around. She deals with all the stock issues: price, convenience, orthodoxy, scientific progress. We've heard the arguments from the establishment, industrial agriculture experts, and the pharmaceutical and medical experts, the biotechnology lovers. Niti answers each one with the credentials of a prophetess. Let the testimonies verify. This book will make you think about things that receive short shift in our modern techno-adulterated culture. Your body's cells, what's on your plate, how animals and plants grow to nourish you, your commitment to your children and family. It is a devotional to move people to be devoted to Right Eating and Right Farming, written by someone whose insatiable quest for truth makes her message profoundly eloquent and compelling. Thank you, Niti, for sharing your story. And thank you for showing all of us the path to health. And thank you, Meenakshi, small, young, vulnerable though you are, that out of numbing tragedy can come life, force, beauty. Farm to fork. Meet Riot.